The Boy Who Grew Dragons by Andy Shepherd. Chapter 19. Coffee Surprise. No one was allowed in the classroom block till the end of break, not even for the loo really. But by pleading and doing some pretty manic jiggling up and down, I managed to convince Mrs. Olive, who was on playground duty, to let me in. As soon as I was inside, I darted into the nearest classroom and fished out the fidgeting dragon. Once in the open, he calmed down and perched happily on my hand. He stretched out his wings, which flickered through varying shades of red before settling into a rusty copperish colour. "Sorry," I said, "but there's just too many nosy Parkers out there." Flicker fluttered down into the sink. It was half full of muddy brown water from the paint pots that had been left to soak. "Don't drink that," I blurted, seeing him lowering his head. I cleared everything out and filled the sink with clean water. Then I stood back, watching as the dragon drank and drank, swinging his head back and forth across the surface of the water to scoop up each gulp. Nicely refreshed, Flicker took off to explore the classroom. "Hey, come back," I hissed, keeping an eye firmly on the door. "Look, I'll take you for a fly later after school." It was not the best time for the dragon to be soaring around. I kept glancing at the windows, half expecting to see Liam's leering face smushed up against the glass, but Flitter didn't seem to care. He was swooping and diving and turning somersaults above my head like in a crazy display, like he'd just invented flying or something. I tried to get him back in, but Flicker was having far too much fun to stop whizzing about. He dive-bombed towards Mrs. Firth's desk, with a gasp of horror I saw that, as he passed over, he gave a little shudder. I was pretty sure I knew what that meant. I'd seen enough of them in the last few days. And sure enough, I was right. Flicker had done a poo in mid-air. The explosive little stink bomb dropped away, and I watched as it fell in slow motion. Down, down, down. With an even bigger gasp, I saw the slimy mess arc gracefully through the air towards the desk at the front of the classroom. And with a dull plop, the deadly dragon dropped. Slap, bang, into Mr. Firth's coffee cup. "What are you doing?" hissed a voice behind me. I spun round and saw Ted's head peering round the door. "Mr. Firth will kill you if he catches you in here. Come on, it's nearly time to line up for a bell. Let's go." I looked up from Ted to the cup, but before I could move, Flicker took off from the bookshelf where he'd landed. I watched as he started weaving in and out of the display of hot air balloons hung in groups from the ceiling. I held my breath, terrified his tail would catch one of the wires and bring the whole lot crashing down. Following my gaze, Ted looked up. He was just in time to catch the dragon's next poo squarely on his forehead. The stinky green mess, which was particularly runny, dribbled down his nose, but Ted barely noticed. He stood open-mouthed, staring bug-eyed, wondering at the little ruby shape that flitted above him. "Ted, meet Flicker," I said, grinning. For once, Ted didn't say anything. "I'd close your mouth if I were you," I'd laughed. "Don't want one of those little bombs landing in there." Ted turned to look at me. His bewildered face still streaked with poo. But, he stuttered. "Oh, and I should wash that lot off before it dries," I said, pointing towards the sink. "Dragon poo has a nasty habit of exploding." A second later, the bell rang. Startled, Flicker zipped down to land on my shoulder. I quickly tucked him into my pocket. "We have to get Mr. Firth's cup," I urged. "What?" spluttered Ted, who was desperately splashing water over his face. "The coffee cup," I said, my voice all now tight and squeaky with a panic. "He did a poo in it." We didn't get the coffee cup, because before either of us could get to it, people started piling into the classroom, and the bell rang again for the start of lessons. "What are we going to do?" I whispered as we raced through the doorway. "Hope he doesn't drink the coffee, I guess," said Ted. Chapter 20. The Great Idea. Over the course of the afternoon, I watched Ted pass from dazed disbelief to almost uncontrollable excitement. When the last bell finally rang, he dragged me, Kat and Kai, to the corner of the park, to the little copse of trees where we made our dens. "Well, show them then." "Show us what?" asked Kat. "Yeah," said Kai. "Dude, you've been Off the scale weird all day. And now you've got Ted at it too? Ted was grinning from ear to ear, like a cat who'd got the cream. And before I could say anything, he blurted it out. It's true. He's only gone and got an actual real-life dragon. Kat and Kai stared from Ted to me and back again, obviously trying to suss out where the wind-up was heading. Then, figuring they should just play along, Kai called our bluff. Okay then, show us. So I did. I opened my pocket and let the twins peer in at the still glowing dragon that nestled in there. His warm, smoky smell floated up towards us, and this time there was no talk of me telling stories. There was a moment of stunned silence, and then, "This is the most awesome thing in the world ever!" Kai shrieked. "The totally awesomest," agreed Kat in an awed whisper, her eyes not leaving Flicker for 1 second. And they weren't wrong. I stood there soaking up this glorious moment, the moment of when, for once, I had the coolest pet in the world. But Flicker didn't seem happy with all the attention. He fluttered up to my shoulder, curled his tail around my ear, and lay his head against my neck. I scratched him behind his horn, trying to turn the huge smug grin across my face to a more look of cool casualness. "What else can he do? Does he breathe fire? What does he eat? Is he going to get bigger? Where does he come from?" asked Kai, unleashing a tumble of questions. "It's more sparks than fire at the moment," I said, laughing, "and he eats leaves and vegetables." I didn't want to admit that for the rest I was about as clueless as they were. They were looking at me like I was an expert dragon whisperer or something, and I didn't want to spoil that. It didn't take Flicker long to get used to the others, and he was soon fluttering from hand to hand. "He's so cute," said Kat, running her finger down his spiny back. "Do you think he understands stuff?" said Ted. "I mean, could we train him, do you think?" They tried calling him from one to another, and although once or twice Flicker flew over to the hand of the person that called him, mostly he didn't. "He's still a baby," I said, feeling like I wanted to stick up for him. "Or as daft as a Dexter," said Kai. Dexter was their terrier. They'd had ideas of training him to do cool circus tricks when he was a pup, but the most they ever got him to do was sit and stay, and now he wouldn't do either of that. "Can he come home with us?" Kai said suddenly. No," I said. "Why not? You've had a turn. You've had him for ages." "He's not a toy," I said crossly. I made out that I was sticking up for his rights as a majestically free and independent animal, but actually I was overcome by the very deep feeling that I didn't want anyone else having the coolest pet. "I didn't say that," said Kai. "I just meant we should share him." It was true that we did share most stuff. Toys, books, and games, they all got swapped from house to house. But Flicker was different. "He's mine," I said quietly. Kai scowled. It reminded me of how Lolly looked just before she lost it. Of course, Kai was old enough not to go into supersonic meltdown, but I could see he was pretty ticked off. It was at this point that Ted had his brilliant, or not so brilliant, idea. "Hang on. Didn't you say there were others that hatched out of those weird fruits?" "Yeah," I said, knowing exactly where this was going. "Well, we could all have one then, couldn't we?" Chapter 21 is called The Long Wait. I hope you enjoyed both of those chapters. I bet he's really glad he can finally tell his best friends about Flicker. I hope you're all okay at home and you're having a great time. I'll see you all soon. Bye.